She staggered forward, her legs trembling, the sun burning against her back. Dust clung to her torn sandals and sweat rolled down her face, stinging her eyes. For the third time that morning, she nearly collapsed, clutching the thin cloth sack at her side. Inside it, only a few handfuls of rice, barely enough to keep her children alive for another day. She whispered to herself through parched lips, "I cannot stop. They are waiting." And so she walked, mile after mile, day after day. This was her battlefield, her silent war, a mother's war. Her name was Marisol. In her small village, where the earth cracked under the weight of drought and the fields gave nothing but dust, she was known not for wealth or power, but for her endless walks. Each dawn, before the world fully woke, she set out across the winding dirt roads, carrying the only hope her family had. Her children, 2 boys and 1 girl, waited at home. Their ribs pressed sharply against their skin, their bellies hollow, but their eyes still bright with faith. They knew she would return. They always knew. Marisol had nothing left to sell, nothing left to trade. The drought had stolen her crops, and poverty had stolen her peace. But the distant market, nearly 10 miles away, sometimes offered food in exchange for what little labor she could give. Washing clothes, sweeping stalls, carrying loads for strangers, anything that could earn her a small measure of grain. And so each morning she walked. Along the road people saw her. Some pitied her, others mocked quietly. Her clothes were worn thin, patched in places with fabric torn from even older garments. Her sandals were more holes than leather. A man once sneered as she passed, "What good is a mother who can't even feed her children?" She did not answer. She did not break her stride. Her silence was her shield. But the words cut deep, like shards of glass in her chest. Still, she walked on, for her children, for the tiny hands that reached out when she returned, for the voices that cried "Mama" with joy when she opened the door. That joy was worth more than gold. Marisol had not always been a woman of worn shoes and hollow cheeks. Once she had been vibrant. Her husband, Manuel, had worked the fields with her, and together they had dreamed of better days. They would sit under the stars, whispering promises about what they would build for their children. But fate had a cruel hand. One season the rains never came. The soil hardened. Crops withered. The riverbed ran dry. Manuel, desperate to save his family, left to find work in the city. He promised to return with money, with food, with hope. He never came back. No letter, no message, only silence. Some whispered that he had fallen ill. Others suggested he had simply abandoned them. But Marisol refused to curse his name. In her heart, she believed he had wanted to return but never could, and so she carried the burden alone. One afternoon, after walking nearly 15 miles in unbearable heat, her body betrayed her. Her knees buckled, and she fell into the dust. The sack tore open, spilling the precious rice across the road. She gasped in despair, gathering it with trembling hands, her tears wetting the grains. She thought of her children's faces, of their laughter, of their fragile hope. She whispered to the earth, "I can't stop. Not now." But her body screamed for rest. Her vision blurred. Darkness edged her sight. For a moment she almost surrendered, and then she heard a sound. Children's laughter. Not her own children's voices, but echoes of them in her mind. She saw them running barefoot through the fields, laughing, calling for her. That memory was her strength. She rose. Slowly, painfully, she rose. She walked on. Unknown to her, each weary step was shaping not just her children's survival, but their future. In her silence, in her suffering, she was planting something greater than food. She was planting resilience. She was teaching them, without words, that endurance was stronger than despair. Her eldest son, Mateo, watched her more closely than she realized. He saw her cracked feet, her blistered hands, her silent tears at night when she thought no one was watching. He burned those images into his memory, and one night, while she slept from exhaustion, he whispered to his younger siblings, "Mama walks for us. One day, we will walk for her. The villagers noticed Marisol's endless journeys. At first, many ignored her, treating her as just another struggling mother. But over time, something shifted. An old woman by the roadside once slipped her an extra piece of bread. A merchant, seeing her cracked sandals, quietly gave her a discount. And a teacher in the nearby town, an observant man who had once seen Marisol staggering with a sack of rice, spoke to her eldest son when he came with her one day. "You study hard, boy," he said gently. "Your mother walks so far. One day, let her rest." Those words settled deep in Mateo's heart. Years passed. Marisol's children grew. Her back bent more. Her hair grayed early. But she never stopped walking. The world might break her body, but not her will. Mateo studied by candlelight after his chores. He borrowed books, asked questions, learned every scrap of knowledge he could. His younger brother, Daniel, helped carry water and tend the small garden that barely survived. His sister, Alma, sang songs at night to lift their mother's spirit. They grew not with wealth, but with fire, the fire of sacrifice. When Mateo finally earned a scholarship to the city university, he carried his mother's story with him. Every exam, every sleepless night, every challenge, he thought of her feet on that long road. And he whispered to himself, "If she can walk miles with nothing, I can walk miles with knowledge." The day came when Mateo stood on a grand stage, wearing a robe of graduation. The crowd applauded as he was honored with the highest award. Cameras flashed. Leaders shook his hand. But his eyes searched only for one face. In the back row, dressed in the same simple clothes, sat Marisol. Her hands were rough, her sandals still worn. But her eyes glowed with pride. The announcer spoke his name, spoke of his brilliance, his future. But Mateo stepped to the microphone and said, "This honor does not belong to me. It belongs to the woman who walked miles so her children would eat. It belongs to my mother." The hall fell silent, and then people stood. One by one, row by row, they rose to their feet. A standing ovation, not for the young scholar, but for the weary mother whose silent strength had carried him there. Tears streamed down Marisol's face as the crowd clapped, some even weeping openly. In that moment, the years of exhaustion, of hunger, of endless roads were redeemed. No ridicule, no silence, no suffering could erase what she had built. Her sacrifice had blossomed into triumph. She had walked for her children's food. Now they would walk for her honor. A mother's love is not always loud. Sometimes, it is silent steps on a long road, a blistered foot in the dust, a tear hidden in the night. But those silent steps carry generations. Marisol's story is not just hers. It is the story of countless mothers who give everything they have so their children can dream. And now her children's futures burn bright because one woman refused to stop walking. Wherever you are watching this from, pause for a moment. Think of the sacrifices made for you. The meals, the long hours, the quiet struggles you may never even know. Honor them, cherish them. And if this story touched your heart, share it. Leave a comment about where you are watching from and tell us, who is the silent hero in your life? Because heroes are not always found in uniforms or medals. Sometimes, they are mothers walking quietly down a dusty road,